They really, really wanted me. They wanted to invest in youth. They've shown that through their previous years with, people like Lando, like Lewis. So, I think it's sort of been in the team's spirit and mentality.
Oscar Piastri's amazing rookie season hasn't gone unnoticed by McLaren's fiercest rivals, and now it seems like he has the upper hand in replacing Perez in the Austrian squad. Although it was his teammate Norris who had the highest chance of taking over the second seat in Red Bull from 2025 onwards, Piastri's calmness and pure performance have led to Red Bull actually having talks with the Aussie and bringing the super team around him and Verstappen. How possible is this scenario, and is the Webber-Red Bull link going to work given the fact that the former Red Bull driver is Piastri's agent, and he's been the leading factor when it comes to Piastri landing an F1 seat in the first place? It goes without saying that Oscar Piastri created the biggest cloud of fame when it came to his situation with Alpine and the shocking move he made at McLaren. While many were laughing at him back then, he was able to shut down the critics with solid performances ever since McLaren bought Red Bull-like upgrades from Austria, with Piastri's car being mounted with these upgrades from Silverstone. From that point on, he finished second in the sprint race in Belgium, claiming his first podium finish in a race, and has achieved the milestone of being the youngest rookie ever to lead a race in the last decade or so. Considering the fact that he entered a competition with Verstappen, Sainz, Leclerc, Russell, Albon, and many other superstars, this achievement is something that created a lot of buzz around his name. And truth be told, whenever there is a buzz around someone, it usually means Red Bull is interested in replacing Perez with the superstar talent that we're currently discussing. In this case, that would be Piastri. While this scenario seems a bit far-fetched to you, where you hear it for the first time, there is no denying that the talent of Piastri is something that's got the entire F1 world in flames, and many have labelled him as the next great champion. But in order for him to achieve that, he needs to have a decent car, and not to take anything away from McLaren's recent performances and how they found 1 to 2 seconds of performance with just one massive upgrade package, but beating Red Bull is not a team that you can beat on pure merit in the matter of 1 or 2 seasons. The huge problem is that the technical regulations that are currently in place are forbidding the other rivals to make enormous catch-ups to Red Bull because the difference is enormous, to the point that Red Bull has already given up on the development of the car and is focusing on 2024. This will give them enough space to work on the 2025 and 2026 seasons, the period from which the new leadership of Red Bull wants to build a more competitive squad, and one that will be composed of 2 drivers that can fight for wins, rather than Verstappen winning with 20 seconds ahead of Perez. Again, this might seem like too big of a leap for Piastri, but keep in mind that Red Bull is falling in love with rookies who can perform straight off the bat. And so far, Piastri has been nothing but the perfect candidate for the second seat in the Austrian squad. And we're not the only ones who think like this. Eddie Jordan, one of the F1 analysts and a former driver himself, has a very high opinion on this matter. And according to him and his team ownership skills, Piastri at Red Bull makes a lot of sense. When talking about this matter, he went on to say, "The thing that caught my interest yesterday was this guy Piastri. He'd never been to this track before, maybe once in the junior formulas, and for him to come out and qualify on the second row and race like he did, and race against Max, be careful where he's going to go because I think there is big star quality in there. I'm actually blown away with this young kid, so he'd become one of the drivers I'd be looking at to challenge Max in the future." However, we do know that the seat at Red Bull so far is a secured one, and even with Ricciardo's comeback in the sport, it goes without saying that Perez is still the favourite to keep the spot if Red Bull doesn't want to chum the waters with a little bit of a challenge for Verstappen. The sport is getting more and more bored with the one-sided domination of the 2-time world champion, who is slowly but surely crushing towards his 3rd consecutive championship. And Liberty Media, along with the new ownership of Red Bull F1 Racing that's led by Oliver Mintzlaff, want some changes to be applied to this narrative sooner rather than later. If there is anything that we've learned from this entire situation with Perez and Max and their hot and cold rivalry, it's that the relationship between them has been broken down to pieces, and Perez doesn't have what it takes to be a champion, at least not while Verstappen is in the same machinery as him. Paradoxically enough, the only way that a driver could win a championship before 2026 seems to be by joining Verstappen and proving they know how to drive the Honda-powered car better than him, which would be kind of a mission impossible for any driver who has the guts to try it out, including Piastri. That's why Norris was tipped that if he were to join Red Bull, he would have a career path from hell. But is this the same narrative going to apply to his current teammate Piastri? Eddie Jordan believes that Piastri could capitalise on the very uncertain nature of Perez's seat in Red Bull, and with the current difference between these two being 110 and marking the biggest one between two teammates in the history of the sport, Red Bull are now more than convinced that nothing much can change if they want to have a second driver in Perez who's capable of fighting with Verstappen for the championship. But that doesn't mean that Verstappen won't get a teammate sooner rather than later, as Jordan believes that the rise of McLaren would be only enough to prove to be a solid breeding ground for Piastri, who will look to change the environment as soon as the first opportunity is given. And with this recent performance, I think that Red Bull is the perfect team for him to emerge victorious against Verstappen, especially after the amazing qualifying process in which he was just 11 thousandths slower than the Dutchman. When elaborating on this matter, Jordan went on to say, "Piastri is managed by my old partner Mark Webber, and we saw how he got him into McLaren. Don't be surprised if there is a seat available at Red Bull, of course where Mark used to be. Don't be surprised if Piastri is named in front of the public eye in the future. I don't see a Ricciardo return. They had that chance before, and Red Bull doesn't usually go back in time. They have a very forward vision. If there is a change at Red Bull, Webber has brought this kid Piastri on, brought him over from Australia, and what a revelation he's turned out to be." Well, these talks have gotten to Piastri's ears as well, and rest assured that the super talent did not remain immune to these juicy rumours. And who can remain cold-blooded when you're related to the most successful team in 2022 and 2023? While adding that he was flattered that Red Bull are considering an option in which he would be the second driver for the team, potentially even becoming the next alpha male of the team, he's also commended that he's very happy with McLaren and that the team is moving in the right direction. So it's up to the Woking-based squad to prove that they have what it takes to keep both of the drivers in the same squad and win a championship sooner rather than later. But with how hard of a mission this is going to be for a team that's struggled so much in the past couple of years, Piastri's next huge chance might be smiling at him from the other side of the grid. And while that would be a hell move for him just like it would have been for Norris, Perez's seat is one of the most wanted right now. It takes one to recognise one, as the old saying goes, and with Verstappen and Perez's differences in the RB19's performance, it's very vivid that a guy who has a talent like Verstappen, or something similar to his driving style, could deliver the results that the Dutchman is, even though it seems a bit impossible right now. With the increased competition from Norris, Leclerc, Ricciardo and Perez himself, Piastri has found himself in elite company in his first season in Formula 1, and it's up to him to prove that he has what it takes to be the next champion after Verstappen. So, will this be with McLaren, or will he choose the easier way with Red Bull, assuming that he can outperform Verstappen in the same machinery? Let us know in the comments down below.